No, it cannot be! Ah!
Akumaju Dracula X Chino Rondo, otherwise known as Castlevania Rondo of Blood, was first released in Japan in 1993 for the PC Engine Super CD-ROM thing. And for the longest time possible, the only way you could have played this was to get an import copy, which apparently is pretty pricey. All that changed with the release of the Dracula X Chronicles in 2007 for PSP, a remake of Rondo that also included the original with some redubbed animated movies. 2010 would see the original PC Engine release grace the Wii Virtual Console, then paired up with Symphony of the Night in 2018 to form the PS4 compilation Castlevania Requiem, was one of many games included in that TurboGrafx-16 PC Engine mini console thing released in 2020, and apparently there's going to be a limited edition reproduction disc from Limited Run that will be available for a limited time, because that's what physical media is these days. An excuse for artificial demand for limited runs so that we could price gouge later on eBay. But that's a discussion for another time. For today, we'll be playing the game off the Wii Virtual Console since that's the only version I have. And wouldn't you know it, it's also the version that's no longer available for purchase since the Wii Shop is no longer a thing. Anyways, onwards. Rondo opens with Richter Belmont, the latest in the Belmont line of vampire hunting Belmonts, riding a horse who presumably is also a Belmont, and fending off against death in a short battle that means nothing other than to let you test the new controls, but is a nice little thing nonetheless. We then begin our adventure proper in a flaming town, the same town where Simon Belmont began his quest many moons ago. A nice callback, actually. And then things happen. While your main goal, as always, is to fight your way through numerous stages to end the curse of Count Dracula, you also have a side mission to find and rescue 4 damsels in distress, one of whom eventually becomes a playable character. So following in the footsteps of Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, and Castlevania Bloodlines, Rondo gives you 2 playable characters to play with. Richter Belmont is the stock Belmont hero and the character you start off with. He has a whip, he has the traditional sub-weapons as well as a Bible weapon that shoots pages and keys that unlocks doors, and he has the stiff, uncontrollable forward jump. Because apparently the lessons learned by Simon Belmont with regards to whip mastery and airborne versatility in Super Castlevania 4 have been lost over the generations, because Richter simply sticks with the basic skill set. No multi-directional whip strikes, no dangling of the whip, none of that is present here. Instead, he has the ability to create a flame whip at the cost of a few hearts, provided he has no sub-weapon equipped, which is not quite the greatest trade-off since the flame whip isn't all that useful here if I'm being honest. On the bright side, he can jump on and off stairs, can pull off a neat little backflip to avoid certain attacks, and can call upon super attacks called item crashes, which results in neat little screen showers that is damaging to the enemies on screen. This makes Richter a somewhat more agile Belmont than his predecessors, which, while not much of a trade-off for the advanced whip play of the previous 16-bit adventure, which, I'll admit, I had grown to miss somewhat, and really wish I had at certain spots. But at the very least, fits in nicely with this somewhat faster-paced Castlevania adventure. And make no mistake, it's a much quicker moving Castlevania compared to what came before. Stage 2 is where you can rescue the other playable character, an 11-year-old girl in a frilly dress named Maria, who happens to be the more effective fighter of the duo. Sure, she takes damage like a female dog, but she has a double jump, she could slide, her attacks come out quickly with little lag, she certainly moves a little quicker than Richter, and she has an alter ego that punches fast or something, provided you could pull it off. I never really could. Maria is a drastic departure from the usual Castlevania hero of the time, a much more versatile yet volatile playable with more mobility than the stock Belmont fare, might be better equipped to tackle some of these stages to almost game-breaking degrees, but taking twice the damage means a more cautious approach regardless. Rondo's a fairly sizable game. In addition to the 8 main levels you have to venture through, there are also 4 alternative levels that can be accessed through secret means. Sometimes these alternate routes are easy finds, other times they won't, and will require some outside-the-box thinking. So here's the thing with how this works, and I'll try to explain this as best as I can. So you go along the regular path, you beat the regular boss, and you grab a red glowing thing to move on to the next regular level. Now, you could do that, or you find an alternate route in a level, you fight the alternate boss, and you grab an alternate red glowing thing to move on to the next alternate level. Now, if you're on one of the alternate levels, which is usually indicated with a dash symbol after the number, and you go along the usual path of that alternate level, you'll end up fighting the regular boss and getting a red orb to end up back on the regular path. So even in the alternate levels, you have to look for alternate paths to fight alternate bosses and continue down that alternate road. And of course, both paths eventually lead you to the same stage 6, which continues along a single road to the very end. So it's not really branching paths like in Castlevania 3, where one path leads you to one set of levels, while the other path leads you to another set before joining back together. You always have to find the hidden path to play the next alternate level, which, yeah, it adds a bit of an extra challenge, but it's more akin to unlocking secret levels, which...
You serious?
By the way, you could save your progress and you restart on any of the levels you've unlocked so far, so you could go back and find those alternate routes and such. In any event, exploring these alternate paths are key if you're going to rescue the captives. If you wanted to. You could just skip them if you want, not like they really matter, but you get more cutscenes, I guess, and a better ending, and yeah, I tried. So I gotta be honest with these things, right? It'd be nice to toe the fandom line and say that Rondo of Blood is the greatest old school Castlevania or whatever, the greatest masterpiece ever made or whatever, you know. But I don't really do that sort of thing. And if you want a further example of me not doing that sort of thing, wait till we get the Symphony, which should be somewhere along the lines, I guess. But here's the deal. Rondo of Blood is a damn fine Castlevania. It is perhaps one of the better titles of the old school vintage. It just isn't the high and mighty masterpiece that damn near everyone claims it to be. Everything feels like one step forward and also one step backwards. Rondo has a cool backflip, better stair manipulation, some divergent stage progression through alternate outside-the-box means, and a side mission to go along with, a distinct second playable character, save functionality to keep track of your progress, and even hint videos for fighting bosses. I don't mind the little number of callbacks to prior games in the series, subtle or otherwise. I think those are nice touches. Control has, sadly, regressed back to the NES days. As mentioned, Richter is more or less old school Belmont, little to no control over your jumps unless you're standing still, you only have a little movement there. No more multi-directional whip strikes or limp whip movements, no more hooks to snap onto or swing with. These are things that I've mentioned I've missed when playing Dracula X in either its original PC Engine variety or its lesser Super Nintendo reimagining even. Now, of course, the PC Engine gamepad is basically similar to that of the Famicom, but with added turbo switches, so the lesser control is understandable, and to be fair, Richter does manipulate stairs better than his predecessors did, which alleviates one NES-era issue, but there are moments, as I've mentioned countless times, where I miss the more advanced maneuvers of its super predecessor. And on the flip side, Maria's a much quicker, more versatile fighter with her little animal friends and her multi-jump gimmick. She has a little slide, she moves fast, almost breaks the game with her quick attacks that make short work of bosses, and not to mention her sub-weapons comprising all animals, much more effective arsenal compared to what Richter has. It is only because she is such a glass cannon that playing as Maria doesn't turn Rondo into a complete walk in the park. And damage is something that is easy to inflict on the player because you have such a small window of grace after each hit that the same attack can easily inflict a couple of hits on you while you're stunned, or possibly knock you into another situation where you'll take a hit without being able to recover. I didn't care for this during the SNES reimagining, and it somehow feels worse here, and this is supposed to be the superior product. And it is. Because for all of the little nagging issues that I have with Rondo, they're just that, they're minor gripes. And when you get past what's missing, what's there is still pretty damn good. Controlling Richter might not be on the same level as Castlevania 4 Simon, going back to up and attack for sub-weapon use, which works wonders on stairs, better manipulation or not, but for the most part, it's still pretty solid and fairly responsive. Being able to restart on any of the levels you unlock helps in trying to uncover new paths you missed out on the first time, and also saves on backtracking, which I appreciate. Maria is a pretty fun character to play with, and makes for an easier game despite her low defense, and also her jumping is pretty floaty at times I find, for precise jumping and stuff, whatever. But part of me feels the reason Richter feels a bit lacking in this game is so they could highlight Maria as a better hero. You could certainly make a case for that here if her offense is anything to go by. As far as the overall adventure goes, one thing that Rondo isn't going to lack is variety. The variety of locations you get to travel through, the variety of foes you'll encounter, the situations you'll come across and have to overcome, finding the means to progress to the next level, of which there are usually multiple means of doing so, and the bosses you'll tackle with the sub-weapons that have been considerably nerfed from previous entries, not to mention finding some secret stuff hidden in walls and such. It's fun to go through these levels and see what new thing pops up along the way, because something new is bound to pop up every so often. It also helps that this is a much faster paced game compared to previous Vanias, possibly in an attempt to make it seem more exciting in keeping with the anime vibe it's trying to evoke, and for the most part it works. And sure, even at its most pristine, Rondo can be a tough one at times. The boss fights are going to be a struggle the first time around, but it is certainly beatable and a hell of a time. Rondo of Blood is a much more colorful game than its predecessors, even Bloodlines to a certain extent. Basically adopting more of an anime-ish type of atmosphere in terms of the character designs, cutscenes, and whatnots. Hey, they gotta make use of that CD-ROM's technology for silly little videos, and nobody cares about bad live-action video, so let's stick with some cheap anime cutscenes that barely animate for the most part. Whatever, they get the job done at least, so no real complaints. Some of the stages look really good, like the village backdrop in the first stage, or the ghost ship in the fifth, while others, not so much. Character designs are pretty good, whether it be the playable heroes, the lowliest grunts, or even some of the larger boss monsters. All wonderful looking character designs and sprites. So wonderful in fact that they recycled some of the sprites for several more games appearing in more advanced hardware. That sort of speaks to the quality of the pixel work that Rondo provides. This being a PC Engine Super CD-ROM game, Rondo of Blood has CD quality music, a combination of new tunes with remixes of old yet familiar tunes. And so here's that honesty that I warned you about. I don't like the music in this game, at least not for the most part. In fairness, I will admit there are some nice tunes in here. Slash and Picture of a Ghost Ship being a couple standouts for me, and I like the menu choir in the beginning that would get recycled and Circle the Moon. But the music in general, which adopts a more rock medley type of feel, sounds more like remixes that would have been a better fit in one of those Dracula Battle arranged albums they used to put out back in the day. At no point did I feel the high quality rock tunes enhanced the game experience so much that it took away from it, which is probably why I prefer the tunes in the lesser SNES port. The way those tunes sounded on that version, I don't know, sounded a bit more natural to me. And I've said as much when I did a video on that game years ago. I actually think the SNES interpretations of these tunes sound better than the original PC Engine version. Maybe it's the streaming, maybe it's the instrumentation, I don't know. There's an element to this version's soundtrack that feels more natural and energetic compared to the original version, which more often than not felt more like one of those second-rate remix albums being played with a weird echo effect. Because the tracks play off the CD, they'll play a song for a few minutes and then just loop back to the beginning of the track. It's not a constant, uninterrupted stream of music, nor are they play as such. These songs have a beginning, middle, and end, much like songs on an album or a proper music CD. That might be the other thing that took me out of the game somewhat, and there are brief bits of music that are not played off the CD, but are actually done with the standard PC Engine sound synth, which is a discernible contrast from the rest of the music, because you got this loud, boisterous, high-energy rock and roll medley blaring alongside these rather tinny-sounding sound effects and somewhat low-quality voice bites. Well, it's something you have to get used to in a lot of these early CD-ROM platforms, so I won't hold that against it. But the couple of jingles and pieces of music, however brief they may be, playing off the synth is jarring. Overall, Castlevania Rondo of Blood is a fantastic video game. Perhaps one of the PC Engine's best titles that isn't a scrolling shooter, and in terms of the vintage style of Castlevania game, it's definitely a top-tier title. Yes, there are some aspects that I didn't care for nor am I particularly impressed by. No, I don't think it's the best old school Castlevania of the bunch. That spot still belongs to Super Castlevania 4 as far as I'm concerned. But a few sour points is not going to kill a game outright, and Rondo certainly has more than enough high points to make up for its lesser parts. A great game that's well worth checking out, if you haven't already.